This episode of Unqualified Opinions is brought to you by Hirechain. Your next hire could come from anywhere: a recruiter, a job board, a referral network, or a conference. Hirechain manages hundreds of candidate sources for you, so you only see relevant applications and can focus on picking the best person for your team. On average, our customers fill open roles faster and 30% cheaper than with traditional recruiters. Leading companies like The Graph and Masari already use Hirechain. So get your time back. Talk to Hirechain today and hire the best, fast. Visit hirechain.io/Masari for prioritized onboarding. This podcast is meant for informational purposes only and is not meant to serve as investment advice. Hosts and guests may hold cryptocurrencies discussed in this episode. Opinions expressed may not reflect the opinions of Masari.
DePIN has been one of the fastest growing narratives in crypto over the last 12 months. Fundraising volume so far this year is nearly 4x what it was for all of 2023, and total market cap is up 5x compared to last year. But hard details on key data points like revenue and DePIN ecosystem growth can be hard to consolidate. So it's difficult to know what is real progress versus what is hype. So I dove deep to sort through it all and can now tell you which projects have the most revenue, which subsectors are gaining traction, and what to expect next from DePIN. I'm Dylan Bane, and here's the story.
Join us at Mainnet 2024, Masari's premier annual conference in NYC from September 30th through October 2nd. Don't miss the exclusive opportunity to engage with industry leaders like Katie Hahn, Bizer Dimitrov, and Hester Peirce. Explore emerging trends in crypto and AI, and network with top investors and innovators. Benefit from a 20% discount with code MasariPod when you register at mainnet.events. For a prominent presence, contact events@masari.io. Experience the future of crypto at Mainnet 2024.
Hey Dylan, thanks for coming on.
Of course, glad to be on.
I think the time is really good to talk about DePIN on this podcast right now, because you wrote a deep dive report on DePIN last week that was very popular. And there was also a prominent DePIN conference in New York this weekend that you attended. So there's a lot going on in that space.
Yeah, for sure. I think we've seen tons of growth in the DePIN sector over the last year. Our map has been updated quite a bit and saw some really exciting stuff at the conference last week.
As part of this exercise, you did a refresh of our sector map. And for those who aren't familiar, can you remind us what is included in DePIN, what the core pillars are there, and what the new subsectors that you added to the sector map are?
Yeah, so to start very high up, DePIN, Decentralized Physical Infrastructure Network. It's basically a model to crowdfund and bootstrap infrastructure networks in a decentralized way. And the main benefits are basically speed and costs. So instead of like a centralized company, like spending on marketing and sales and normal operations, that's all outsourced to infrastructure providers all over the world. And basically the network can scale globally overnight versus like top-down planning from like a normal company. So what we've done at Masari is we've separated out the DePIN sector into physical resource networks and digital resource networks. So physical resource networks deal with basically the real world. So it could be solar panels for like a solar farm as infrastructure, or it could be a physical hotspot for a wireless carrier network like Helium. And then on the digital resource side, these are non-physical or more intangible resources. So there could be like GPU compute to power an AI inference model, or storage capacity for a platform like Filecoin. And basically we see all these networks united by the common model that I described for all of DePIN. So what we've seen is a lot of growth in the digital resource network side. So on the compute side, we're seeing massive growth on AI related use cases. So we've added a AI, machine learning, and inference section to the map. Most of these are like GPU networks powering machine learning or inference or training models in a decentralized way. We've also added a gaming subsector, which is basically using GPU networks to power pixel streaming, which is a way to stream graphically intensive games from high-end gaming computers to low-end computers. Over on the bandwidth networks, we've seen a growth in AI data layers and protocols like Grass and Uprock. They basically, you just download a Chrome extension and it basically gathers data to train kind of AI models in the background, and you get rewarded with tokens or points for that. And then like moving to the physical resource networks, we're seeing tons of growth in energy networks. So most of these are powering solar related use cases, trying to build a decentralized power grid through what we call a virtual power plant. So basically you have solar panels or an electric vehicle or batteries, and you connect all of that data to this decentralized platform, and it allows the sharing of energy in a decentralized way, which can better stabilize the grid, increase efficiency, and is better suited generally to clean energy sources like solar and maybe wind down the line. We're also seeing a lot of growth in environmental sensor networks like Silencio, RAD, Ambient, which just collects data about the environment and then sells it off to create a more accurate picture of data that companies or individuals can use. Then we're seeing a lot of growth in the wireless sector, which we call DY. We're basically seeing Helium get a ton of growth. Dawn's this new protocol doing decentralized broadband for internet connectivity. We're seeing more growth in Wi-Fi related protocols, and we're seeing a lot of promise there. That's like a very high level overview of our changes. There's some smaller changes like adding the robotics section for basically decentralized robots. Some very interesting use cases, and then more like driving and vehicular data through Demo, Wingbits, MVL, and others.
So, as part of your exercise, you did deep dives on two things that are especially interesting. One, the revenue that these protocols are generating, which can be hard to find for DePIN projects. Can you give a summary of your findings and maybe what surprised you most there?
Yeah, so I think people have seen a lot of hype in the DePIN sector. Market caps are up, 5x year over year. Tons of fundraising growth, and the question is, are the underlying fundamentals keeping up with that growth? And what we're seeing is broadly no. So like the highest earning protocol is Filecoin. They generated around $4 million in the last quarter, which is definitely a lot of revenue and much better than they were doing 5-10 years ago. But doesn't necessarily justify a 2.5 billion valuation just on its own. And then like we're seeing very wide ranges of revenue to market cap multiples. At the low end, we surprisingly have Glow, which is kind of generated something like 450 or so thousand non-chain revenue in the last 90 days. They're trading at only an 8x market cap, probably because it's a very new protocol. They're in a guarded launch. Public awareness is still growing, and it's just very early stage. So that's on the very low end. That's like a very reasonable multiple, especially for a tech company. On the other end, we have something like the Graph, which trades at over $1 billion and has a 6,000x revenue multiple. So way out of line. Like doesn't generate more than 100,000 over the last 90 days. But but it still has a very high revenue just because of high expectations of growth and the total addressable market that it might have in the future. So what we're seeing is revenue is not really kept up, but it's starting. I think the market's still seeing DePIN as a very early stage investment, a very like venture style investment, where revenue will catch up the growth once these networks have scaled and are potentially already global. Um, so it's just very early, not at all unusual for the tech industry, but it's more on the innovation and promise of DePIN that market cap growth has been based on rather than underlying fundamentals.
When you were at this event, did you get a sense from builders about what the specific reasons are that revenue has not come as quickly as some have hoped?
Yeah, I would say it's definitely case by case. So there was actually, there's a whole panel of protocols that are generating over 1 million in ARR already. So like they've done really good, like their new protocols, things like Protea, Dawn, which is just launching, and Glow. And then, there are other protocols that have been around for a while and aren't doing as well on the revenue side, even if they have a lot of growth and usage. I would say the largest issue that might apply to the most protocols is just on the demand side. They can't compete effectively right now with more integrated services that have customer support, tailored solutions for your business needs, um, and aren't just competing purely on price. So DePIN protocols tend to offer resources at a lower price overall compared to something like an AWS, but it doesn't offer that same level of customization, which can increase the total value to customers. So I think the large constraint is really there. And I think we're seeing some interesting approaches to that. So using a more Web 2 style demand side front end where you can kind of create a customized solution. And then on the back end, it's DePIN, it's a DePIN network where it's like a very cheap commodity. So a company or a protocol like Protea, they have like a GPU inference network, an API. It's very Web 2y on the demand side. Like any developer can come in, use their inference for like image generation, AI image generation. And then on the back end, it's like a full GPU compute network where anyone can contribute. And that kind of enables lower costs for Protea versus like a Web 2, like centralized normal API provider. So I think like what we might see is more of that in the future, where on the demand side, it's like an integrated Web 2 type service. And on the supply side, it's like a full DePIN network.
You're also looking into where most of these DePIN projects are building. Solana's leading the way there, which narratively is what most expected. But what else did you find?
Yeah, I'd say Solana's seen tons of growth over the last year. I think I had a lot of conversations at the summit and basically centered around Solana is cheap, it's fast, and has low friction. And for a DePIN use case, that's kind of just what they're looking for. So like we are seeing some protocols build as L2s. Daylight just launches I think an L3 or integrated as some sort of L2 combination with Base as a Ethereum L2. We see some protocols trying to be app chains, or like a sovereign rollup, although that also seems to be moving towards Solana. So to give an example, Dawn was like Caldera, using a Caldera rollup as a service, um, and now it's switching to Solana. So I think we're seeing the DePIN space broadly accept Solana. However, we're also seeing the DePIN specific blockchains like Peak and IOTEX get a lot of traction. So in our research, we saw that Solana had the most DePIN projects, followed by Ethereum, and then IOTEX and Peak were right after there. So these platforms have a lot of promise because they're built specifically for DePIN. They have like very custom tailored RWA integrations, AI integrations, another core infrastructure, which they call modules generally. And this can be attractive to DePIN projects, even as like specific functions. So like using Peak for a DePIN module and then building the rest of it on Solana. Polygon also has a lot of growth and usage on the DePIN space. Aside from that, I'd say there's not like major DePIN chains. I'd say it's really Solana, Ethereum, Polygon, IOTEX, and Peak. And I think like the trend is towards Solana, but that could very easily reverse as these other ecosystems invest more into attracting DePIN projects and more custom tailored solutions.
The bulk of your report dove into the few subsectors that are driving a lot of the growth in this space. Can you walk us through those subsectors?
Yeah. So I mentioned a few at the beginning: GPU networks, decentralized energy, and then decentralized wireless. So I'll start with decentralized wireless. So these are protocols that are basically enabling wireless networks, whether that's internet connectivity through broadband or like a 5G plan for like your cell phone. And we've seen a lot of growth, especially with Helium. So Helium launched Helium Mobile in December of 2023, partnered with T-Mobile. And what it is basically a cell phone plan for $20 a month compared to a national average of $140 for a normal cell phone plan. Since its launch, we've seen subscriptions surpass 100,000 in only 7 months, which is a major milestone for any crypto project, and especially a DePIN project. And how it works is basically in any area you're at, you can connect to a Helium hotspot that provides your internet. And then if there's no internet coverage, it falls back to T-Mobile, which rarely happens. So they can keep the $20 a month plan. And off of that, we've seen Helium's HNT token grow 50% in July, which is the most of any token in the crypto top 100 by market cap. So people are starting to pay attention to growth in the DY space. Helium's done really great. Another prominent protocol coming out is Dawn. They do decentralized broadband for basically at-home internet. So how they pitch it is Dawn is doing for internet connectivity what solar panels did for electricity. So basically you can get like an at-home antenna, connect to the Dawn protocol network, and you can basically supply your own broadband internet through that and then sell excess capacity to the network around you. So you can profit off your own internet. The protocol is yet to launch, but we're already seeing massive traction. They launched a Chrome extension browser, Chrome browser extension last week, which already has 100,000 downloads and users, basically validating nodes on the network. They'll be primarily targeting cities like New York, where there's high density of people. And this will basically lower internet costs. So on Dawn right now, you can, on their parent company, Andrina, which is launching the protocol, you can get internet for 20 to 30 a month compared to like national medium of 70 to 100. And they're basically, what they're doing is buying internet wholesale and selling it for cheap to retail. So basically every like local internet market is a monopoly or duopoly, and internet is massively upsold. And they're kind of just trying to break those monopolies using DePIN and having people sell their own internet to each other. The third sector I want to highlight is our energy network. So these are protocols like Daylight, Glow, Sourceful, Star Power. They're all basically trying to reinvent the energy sector to move it from a centralized grid to a decentralized grid using what's called virtual power plants. So people just connect their devices. It could be their solar panels, it could be their electric vehicle, it could be certain types of batteries, and this enables a whole lot of data to be accumulated and energy to be connected into a network in a decentralized way. This can kind of create more local power plants that are closer to the location where the power is being generated and collected. and enables basically a more efficient power grid. We talked about Glow in another Messari report, but they've already grown to over 50 solar farms across the US. They're signing solar farms in India, potentially Argentina in the very near future. And they're offsetting tons of carbon through creating carbon credits that are considered more reliable on the open market than other carbon credits. Sourceful is actually partnering with Helium to create an energy subnet, which is basically a virtual power plant powered by Helium and existing Helium hotspots. And they're planning to they're trying to basically accelerate this virtual power plant by using existing DePIN infrastructure. So we're kind of seeing crypto's composability and interoperability work in there. Star Power seems to be the largest virtual power plant. They have over 7,000 nodes connected globally, and we're seeing a lot of growth there. So we saw tons of excitement about energy at the DePIN Summit, and we're kind of tuned in to see what's next for that subsector.
Yeah, let's finish up by talking about the event you went to this weekend, the DePIN Summit. What were some of the most interesting things you observed there?
Yeah, so I think the big thing that was highlighted was just the growth of the whole industry. So the conference itself had 3 times as many attendees as last year. And I think what I've heard from most people's reflections so far is that they had the greatest concentration of high quality conversations they've experienced at a crypto conference in 2024. I think what really stood out to me was the diversity of problems being solved in DePIN. So whether that's energy or gaming or AI or tracking weather data or trying to become decentralized Uber, we're seeing tons of like real world problems being addressed, and starting kind of to fulfill crypto's promise of solving real world problems that I think a lot of people have been waiting for. So I think like it's really coming in through DePIN, and we saw that at the summit. And it's also interesting how collaborative the event was. So no one's really competing with each other at this point. Like even the energy protocols are addressing such a massive market that they're kind of collaborating. They're talking about partnerships. This like it's a multi-trillion-dollar global industry of trying to replace centralized energy grids, which are already outdated, built in like 1890 in some instances. So there's tons of opportunity. There's not much competition, and the best entrepreneurs in the space aren't really competing. So I think this is opening up a lot of potential for collaboration and partnerships, which can accelerate the growth of DePIN. So I'd say the biggest takeaways are the diversity of problems that are being solved, real world problems that are being solved that aren't crypto native problems, and the lack of competition within each vertical just because there's so many problems to fix using DePIN.
Okay, thanks, Dylan. Looking forward to what you write about next in this category.
Yeah, for sure. We have some reports in the works on the DY side, on the energy side, that we're really excited about, and will be released in the coming months. This episode was produced by Steve Bichimer based on the report. It's time for a DePIN sector update written for Messari Enterprise by me in August 2024. To learn more about Helium, IoTeX, and DePIN as a whole, please consider subscribing to Messari Pro at messari.io.